Hey, what's up? Andrew Kramer here for VideoCopilot.net, and welcome to another very exciting After Effects tutorial. Today we're going to take a look at creating some energy inside of After Effects, so here's what we're going to be doing. Okay, so we have a whole bunch of particle layers. We have these paper particles, we have energy particles, the twister, and of course the FedEx truck down here. Okay, let's go and get started. I'm going to take our New York shot, drag it into the New Comp button, create a new comp. This is a shot I took while I was in New York and came in handy because now we're using it for a tutorial. So, okay, let's go and create our first particle system. I'm going to create a new solid and we'll call this sucking particles. Sucking, I can't think of anything funny to say here. So I'll choose OK. We'll choose Effect, Simulation, CC Particle World. And now we have a 3D particle system. I'm going to create a new camera and we'll make it 35 millimeter, okay. And that way if I take the camera tool I can move it around and try to line up the grid with our floor. So if I hit C I can toggle through the tools, I'll back it up, drop it down. And so now what I'll do is take the particles, change it to off. And so we just see the particles. And then we'll go and move the particles on the Y down so it's closer to the ground. And if we just turn that on for a moment back, we can just see that we're getting close to the ground there. And we'll choose off. And so there's our particles. Now we're going to go to the options and we'll go to rendering. And we want the particles to perform like ice. And that way they sort of slide. And then I choose OK, OK. And so now you can see the particles just kind of slide across that surface. And we'll bring the position down even more so that we just see them like that. Now let's also increase the size of the particle emitter. So we'll just increase it X and Y, actually just Z, forward and back like that. And we'll set the physics to -1.5. And so now the particles are sort of sucking inward. And we just want to play with it so that we only see particles on the ground. And we can also change the type of particle if we go down. And we'll change it to tri-polygon, which is these little characters. And then if we go up to the options, and in rendering, turn motion blur on and choose OK. And that way they have a little bit of motion blur. And then if we size these down a bit, they'll look a lot better. And then we can increase the birth rate now that they're a bit smaller. And we can turn the life of the particle down so that they sort of die when they get to the middle. And so just a quick RAM preview, take a look at how that looks. So that looks pretty cool, and we can change the color over time, make it look a little bit more interesting. And we can, change it to additive mode or screen mode. So the next one we're going to create is sort of the twister-like object. So I can probably just duplicate this particle and Control D, and we'll change this to twister. And then we'll go in the physics settings and we'll change it to twirl. And that way they sort of spin, and we can just shut this one off so we can look at individual ones. Okay, so now the particle is just kind of twisting around. We're going to change the producer size to a very small size, like that. And I'll change it to add so we can see it a bit better. Okay, so we want to go ahead and turn the velocity down and the gravity down. And we want to raise the position up a bit. And then we'll make the radius on the y-axis a little bit longer, like that. And then if we increase the velocity, it'll sort of spread them out. And we turn on the spin. Okay, so now the particles are sort of spinning, and we also want them to raise up. So we'll change the gravity to negative. And that way they'll sort of spin upwards, and just not too much. It's probably a bit too much, -0.05. Okay, now the other thing I want to do is add sort of a core to this. So we'll create a new solid, and we'll make it orangish yellow. And shut it off here. With it selected, take the pen tool And we're just going to kind of draw a shape like that. And we can turn the layer on, hit F and feather the mask, and we'll hit additive mode. And that way we just create sort of this hot core. Now we have that out of the way. I'll go ahead and move this down with the twister, and we'll call it core. Now what I want to do is pre-compose these two elements, but we have a camera in our scene, so we need a camera in that scene also. So I'll duplicate the camera, take one of the cameras and these two elements, hold down Shift, choose Layer, Pre-compose, and we'll call it Twister, and OK. And so now that's in the new comp. We can change it to additive mode in here. And then we'll choose Effect, Distort, Turbulent, Displace. So we can animate the evolution. So that way it sort of moves around in a cool way. So we'll alt-click on the evolution. We'll type time times, you just do multiply, I don't know, like 200. And that way it just kind of spins around like that. Now we want to make it a little less intense, so we'll bring the amount down and the size down also. So now it looks sort of, like a twister where it's sort of spinning around sort of an uneven axis, and that's kind of fun. And of course, this may even work if you're doing a twister with the right settings. You could probably do a pretty believable twister with particles and debris flying off of it. So the principles are important here, and you guys can do anything you want with it. For example, if you want to make a movie called Twister, you could have this really powerful twister come, and the scientists, they want to sort of extrapolate data from the inside of the twister so they could learn more about it, and then all of a sudden a category 5 one comes, and just cows are flying over the roads, and just crazy stuff has happened. People are dying, mayhem. Honestly, that would be a good movie. I'd go see that. And also I'd probably cast Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton if I were making it. So moving on now to the other particle system, I want to create sort of the paper debris. So we'll take our sucking particles again, and we'll just duplicate it, and we'll call it paper. By the way, just hit return on the keyboard to rename layers, and we'll shut that off. Go into the settings, go physics, twirl, and then it's just kind of flying around. I'll turn the velocity down a bit. And we'll change the type of particle to quad polygon. And so just kind of a square looking object. Make the size a little bigger. We can, let's see, turn it to like a paper color, grayish. Change it to normal. So just kind of have some debris flying around. Move around the producer so that sort of in a different position here, and speed again, we'll turn that a little less intense, and increase the radius. Now for the paper, we can also go into the options and click on the rendering and set it to bounce, and that way when the paper hits, they'll kind of keep going and do some different stuff. So probably make the gravity negative, kind of wild, random, and such. So now we also want to create our core animation, which is sort of the wild, energy coming from this area. So what I'm going to do is take our New York shot and duplicate it, Control D, and then we're going to choose Effect, Simulation, and Particle World. And we're going to start fresh, and we'll change the particle type to Lens Convex. And when you do that, Particle World is going to use the image as sort of what's being reflected. So you can kind of see what that does. Now I'm going to go into the options and into rendering. And in the render settings, it says full render, above floor, on or under floor. We want to set it to above floor. And that way, any particles that go below will just kind of disappear. And that's kind of what we want for this scenario. So we'll bring the producer, the position, down just a little bit. And we'll turn down the particle birth rate. come down here to the physics. You know, we can set the gravity to 0, or maybe just a little bit of gravity. Bring that producer down closer to the floor. Velocity down. We don't want these particles going too far away. We just want them kind of emitting. And also in the options, there is an opacity map, which allows you to sort of fade it in, fade it out. And we want it to be fade in round, you know, something where it's pretty smooth as the particles kind of fade away. And we can turn that off, and now we can see it, set it to off, and that way we don't see the grid. And then for the particles, I'm going to choose Effect, Color Correction, Curves, and we want to give it a little bit of color. And probably just maybe some red. Change the transfer mode to maybe additive. And maybe increase the size of this. And we want to make the size of these a little bit smaller. These are sort of secondary particles. And the color maybe a little less yellow, a little bit more red. So something like that. Now to create the other particles, we're going to go into our project, take our smoke element, drag that out, and what we're going to do is pre-compose this element. So layer, pre-compose, move all attributes, okay, and then we're going to alt-click on it, and we want to get rid of the white. So we're going to mat it out, duplicate the layer. We'll set the bottom layer to Luma Matte Inverted. That gets rid of most of that. And then we'll take the bottom layer and we'll choose Generate Fill with White. And we probably want to get rid of this line. So we'll just take the rectangle mask tool and just mask it out. And also I'm going to go ahead and size our particle down. So we'll just size it down maybe 50%. And we'll go back into the New York medium shot, and there's our particle. And we're going to choose Effect, Simulation, Particle World. And we're going to go down to the particle. We're going to change it to Lens Convex. And that's going to use that particle as sort of a background. And we'll turn the birth size up and the depth size up even larger. And we'll move up, change it to off here for the floor. And we also want to bring the birth rate down a bit. And the producer, spread that out a little bit. And so you can see our particles is just this very interesting kind of energy. And we also want to colorize it. And the quick way to do that is Effect, Color Correction, Colorama. And this is a tip that we take a look at in the Light Streaks Part 2 tutorial, and we want to change the output to ramp gray and the input to alpha. And then we'll take this down, and then that way when we choose Effect, Color Correction, Curves and add some color, say a little bit of orange, a little bit of red, we can then colorize it properly, because without that the colorization doesn't work. So that is important. I'm going to go to the green channel, and we'll sort of make a contrast curve here to create sort of a hot looking particle system. And I'll change it to additive, you know, make it really, really cool looking or whatever. And then the physics, we can bring the gravity down a little bit. These particles are just kind of wild. And we can also bring the system down, even though it's 3D, we can just bring the layer down and even size it down so that it fits into this particle energy area. Now I'm also going to make a new solid, and I'm going to make it red, and I just want to create sort of a mask using this layer. So I want to kind of create a shape follows this area and use it, feather it maybe a bit, and use it as a Luma Matte or an alpha matte for our particles, so that if I move this up a bit, it looks like the particles are on the ground here at this position. So I'll change that to red. Rather than the particles sort of being all over the place. And this way they look like they're emitting, in this area. So that's a good start for that particle. And you can also, play around with the contrast now once it's created to make it, the alpha, that is, and make it more interesting. I also like to add the blur effect. It's called vector blur, and just kind of creates an interesting looking energy feel on your layer. And that way it looks a little unnatural, a little strange, which is what we want. Also increase the birth rate to make a lot more energy going on. You can turn the longevity, the life of the particle down too, so that they don't go beyond the area of our mask here. So that's sort of the main part. Now we want to create the light on the floor. So we'll create a new solid, and we'll make this one sort of yellowish orange. We'll take the circular mask tool, and we're going to add a circle here. Hold down Control Shift, and it'll keep it conformed. Hit F, feather it, and bring the expansion in just a bit. And we'll change it to add. Turn it to a 3D layer, and then we're going to rotate it till it's flat, and then move it down to the floor, and maybe feather it some more. We want it to be very, very feathered, and maybe we'll bring the expansion in. And scale the layer up. So that looks pretty good. We'll duplicate that layer and hit S and scale this down. So there's two of them. One is going to be, in the inside part, and the other one's going to be on the outside part. Now the outside one, we're going to add a little expression to the opacity. So we're going to Alt-click on the stopwatch. We're going to type wiggle, like 8, 30. And that way 8 times a second, it's going to randomize. And so it's going to kind of just flickers a bit, and maybe make this 12. So that'll look kind of cool. Turn that up. Now let's go to the background layer, and let's play around with the color. Let's go ahead and bring the darkness down so that our scene stands out a little bit more. Also, we'll go to the red channel, bring it down a bit, and to the blue channel, bring it up a bit. Give it a little bit of interest. Also, we'll make a new solid, make a black solid, and we'll create a vignette. We'll just double click on the ellipse tool, subtract, F, feather it out, change the transfer mode to, classic color burn, and then bring the opacity down just a bit. Now the other thing, the particles are on top of the car, and just duplicate the layer. We'll move it to the top, and then we'll just mask out the foreground elements, and you can do this as detailed as you want to. I'll just give you the quick rundown here. And that way the particles stay inside of this area. I'm going to go ahead and position some of the elements a little bit more directly in the scene. So I'm going to move this down here and maybe make it a little bit more intense on the alpha channel, so it just stands out a bit more as it sort of emits the energy. Finally, last minute touch, take the comp, put it in a new comp so it's by itself. And what we could do is add a little bit of camera shake, and we can do that by hitting P, alt-clicking on the position, typing wiggle 8, 10, and then we can go and click on motion tile. There's a whole tutorial on this earthquake effect. It's called earthquake HDR, and give you a lot of information. Motion tile. drop that on there. Mirror edges, 110, 110, and that'll create, you know, a little bit of that. And also you can check out our great plugin called Twitch, Video Copilot Twitch. And it's kind of a cool effect where we can add some light and some color flicker. And that'll just kind of give it a little bit more life. We can go into the color, maybe randomize the color and the intensity of that so that, you know, it just really does some wild stuff to your shot. And, you know, that could definitely be, you know, a very exciting way to make a new Mortal Kombat movie. Okay, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Be sure to check out our blog and all of our other great content on the site. And of course, our great products and DVDs like Twitch and many others. So I'm Andrew Kramer for VideoCopilot.net. We'll see you next time.